In a world where the lines between reality and darkness are blurred, one girl's desperate cry for help would change everything. Meet Haley, a 19-year-old girl on the brink of destruction. Her story is one of pain, loss, and redemption. But what happens when the darkness closes in, and the only one who can save her is the one person she never expected to meet? Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. And if you believe in fighting for the helpless and showing kindness to humanity, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Let us begin.
Haley's gaze drifted out the window, her eyes tracing the gritty landscape of Flint, Michigan. The city's worn streets and faded dreams seemed to mirror her own life. At 19, Haley's world was a battleground, scarred by the lies her mom told her and the weight of her own anger. Memories of her childhood crept in like shadows, haunting her. Haley's mom, Sarah, had woven a narrative of abandonment and tragedy, painting Haley's father as a criminal who had disappeared from their lives. But the truth was far more complex, and Haley was about to find out. The echoes of Mrs. Graham's voice still lingered, a constant reminder of the racism and bullying Haley faced in school. "You're just another statistic, Haley," Mrs. Graham had sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're just here. Nobody cares what you do because you can't do anything meaningful." Haley's hands clenched into fists as she recalled the day Mrs. Graham humiliated her in front of the class. She had brought in her project work late, and Mrs. Graham had seized the opportunity to belittle her. The words still stung, etched into Haley's mind like a scar. The bullying was relentless. Kids in school would call her names, push her around, and exclude her from games. One time, they even locked her in a locker, laughing and jeering as she pounded on the door, desperate to escape. Haley remembered the sound of her own screams, muffled by the metal door. Her mom was no help. Sarah just told Haley to toughen up and get over it, but Haley couldn't. The pain and shame ran too deep. She felt like an outcast, invisible and unwanted. As Haley's thoughts drifted back to the present, she felt a familiar sense of anger and resentment simmering just below the surface. She was trapped in a cycle of pain, with no escape in sight. The apartment was quiet, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Haley's mom, Sarah, lay on the couch, her eyes glazed over from the liquor and cigarettes. Haley watched her, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. Why couldn't her mom be there for her? Why couldn't she see the pain Haley was in? Haley's eyes dropped to the floor, her thoughts consumed by the weight of her past. She felt like she was drowning, suffocating under the lies and the pain. But she didn't know how to escape, how to break free from the cycle of hurt. It was June 2021, and Haley was struggling to make ends meet. She worked 2 jobs, trying to scrape together enough money to pay the bills. But it was never enough. She felt like she was constantly running, trying to stay ahead of the debt collectors and the bills. As she stood there, feeling the weight of her world bearing down on her, Haley realized she had reached a breaking point. She couldn't keep going like this, trapped in a cycle of pain and lies. Something had to change. But what? Haley's thoughts swirled with desperation as she gazed around the cramped apartment. The peeling paint and stained carpet seemed to closing in on her. She felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of her own despair. Just then, her phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor at work. Haley's heart sank as she read the message. She was in trouble again, this time for being late to her shift. Haley knew she couldn't afford to lose her job, not now, when she was barely scraping by. The stress and anxiety threatened to overwhelm her. Haley felt like she was drowning, with no lifeline in sight. She thought about her mom, about the lies and the pain, and something inside her snapped. With a newfound determination, Haley squared her shoulders and began to pace the room. She couldn't change the past, but she could change her future. She could start by telling the truth, by confronting the lies that had haunted her for so long. Haley's eyes locked onto a photo of her mom, taken when Haley was just a child. Her mom's smile seemed to mock her, to remind her of all the times she'd been hurt and betrayed. But Haley wasn't a child anymore. She was a grown woman, and it was time she took control of her own story. With a fierce determination burning within her, Haley picked up her phone and dialed a number. It was time to uncover the truth about her past, about her mom's lies and the secrets she'd kept hidden for so long. As Haley waited for the person on the other end to answer, she felt a sense of trepidation mixed with hope. She was about to embark on a journey that would change her life forever. Little did she know, the truth was far more complex and far more painful than she could have ever imagined.
Chapter 2. The Truth.
Haley's phone rang, shrill in the silence. She hesitated for a moment before answering, her heart racing with a sense of foreboding. "Haley, it's Aunt Sherry," her aunt's voice said, warm and gentle. "I need to see you, sweetie. We need to talk about something." Haley's mind began to spin with possibilities. What could her aunt want to talk about? "What is it, Aunt Sherry?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone," her aunt replied. "Can we meet in person? Maybe we could grab coffee or lunch at my house." Haley nodded, even though her aunt couldn't see her. "Yeah, that sounds good." The next day, Haley arrived at Aunt Sherry's, her nerves on edge. She spotted her aunt sitting in the corner of the living room, a warm smile on her face. As Haley approached, her aunt stood up and enveloped her in a hug. "Hey, sweetie," she said. "Thanks for coming." Haley returned the hug, feeling a sense of comfort and security. "Of course, Aunt Sherry. What's going on?" Her aunt led her to a table and they sat down. Haley could see the seriousness in her aunt's eyes, and her heart began to sink. "Haley, I want to tell you something about your mom and dad," her aunt began, her voice gentle but firm. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Haley's heart was racing now, her senses on high alert. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss. "What is it, Aunt Sherry?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Haley's world shattered like fragile glass as she sat in her Aunt Sherry's cozy living room. The warm sunshine streaming through the window seemed to mock her, a cruel contrast to the darkness that was about to consume her. Aunt Sherry's hands trembled as she held Haley's, her eyes brimming with tears. "Haley, sweetie, I'm so sorry it's taken me this long to tell you the truth," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. Haley's mind reeled as Aunt Sherry began to unravel the intricate web of deception that had defined her life. "Your mom, Sarah, and Carlos Russo. They've known each other since childhood," Aunt Sherry started, her words dripping with pain. "Carlos was a troubled soul, in and out of prison, but Sarah, she was drawn to him like a moth to flame. Their connection was toxic, Haley, and it destroyed everything in its path." Haley felt like she'd been punched in the gut. Her mom's lies, the secrets, the pain. It all made sense now. Aunt Sherry's voice dropped to a whisper. "Your dad, Haley, he was a good man. He loved you so much, but Sarah's infidelity, it broke him. He sank into depression and eventually he took his own life." Haley's eyes widened in horror. "He wasn't murdered?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Aunt Sherry shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, baby, he wasn't. Sarah's lies, they've haunted us for so long. But I'm sorry, Haley. I'm so sorry it's taken me this long to tell you the truth." As the truth washed over her, Haley felt like she'd been punched in the gut, the wind knocked out of her. Her mom's lies, the secrets she'd kept hidden for so long. It was all too much to bear. As her aunt continued to talk, Haley felt her world spinning out of control. She was trapped in a nightmare, with no escape in sight. Haley's mind reeled as she processed the truth. Her mom's affair, her dad's suicide. It was all so overwhelming. She felt like she was drowning in a sea of emotions, unable to catch her breath. "Why didn't you tell me?" Haley asked, her voice shaking with anger and hurt. "Why did you let me believe all those lies?" Her aunt reached out and took Haley's hand, her eyes filled with compassion. "I'm so sorry, Haley. I was trying to protect you, but I realize now that I was wrong. You deserved to know the truth." Haley pulled her hand away, feeling a mix of emotions. She was angry with her aunt for not telling her the truth sooner, but at the same time, she was grateful that she finally knew what had really happened. As they sat there in silence, Haley's thoughts turned to her mom. She felt a wave of anger and resentment wash over her. How could her mom have lied to her for so long? How could she have kept the truth hidden? Haley's aunt seemed to sense her emotions, and she reached out again. Haley, I know this is a lot to take in, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. I'll support you no matter what. Haley looked at her aunt, feeling a sense of gratitude. She knew that she couldn't change the past, but she could start to heal. And with her aunt's support, she felt like she could finally start to move forward. But as they hugged, Haley couldn't shake the feeling that she was still trapped in a web of lies. Her mom's secrets had haunted her for so long, and now she wondered what other truths were still hidden.
Chapter 3. The Darkness.
Haley's world had imploded, leaving her trapped in a vortex of pain and anger. Her relationship with her mom was now marred with distrust and resentment, the lies and secrets festering like an open wound. As the days blurred together, Haley's depression deepened, threatening to consume her. She felt like she was drowning, suffocating under the weight of her own despair. The darkness closed in around her, whispering cruel lies in her ear. You're worthless, Haley. You're nothing. In those moments, Haley contemplated surrendering to the void. She thought about ending it all, escaping the pain and the anguish. But something inside her refused to give up. It was then that she found solace in Eminem's music. His raw, unflinching lyrics spoke to her pain and anger, validating her emotions in a way that nothing else could. Haley devoured his albums, finding comfort in the darkness and intensity of his music. She felt a connection to the real Slim Shady, the troubled and tortured soul who poured his heart and soul into every verse. When Eminem announced a concert in Detroit, Michigan, Haley knew she had to be there. She scraped together every last penny, determined to experience the raw energy and power of his live performance. As she stood in the crowd, surrounded by thousands of screaming fans, Haley felt an unexpected connection to the man on stage. Eminem's music was more than just a distraction. It was a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the darkness. After the concert, Haley somehow managed to snag a spot in the meet and greet line. As she stood before Eminem, her heart racing with excitement, she felt a jolt of electricity run through her body. Eminem's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Haley felt like he could see right through her. He asked her a few questions, his voice low and gravelly, and Haley found herself opening up to him in ways she never thought possible. As the meet and greet session drew to a close, Eminem's expression turned serious. "Hey, can I get your number?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. "I want to talk to you more about some stuff." Haley's heart skipped a beat as she handed over her number, feeling a sense of trepidation mixed with excitement. What did Eminem want to talk to her about? And why did she feel like her life was about to change forever?
Chapter 4. The Familiar Silence.
Months passed since Eminem and Haley's initial meeting. Despite his best intentions, Eminem's hectic schedule, juggling concerts, business ventures, and personal life, made it challenging for him to stay in touch with Haley. Haley, on the other hand, had been struggling to cope with her emotions. The brief connection she shared with Eminem had given her a glimmer of hope, but as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, she began to feel abandoned and forgotten. She tried reaching out to Eminem, but her calls and messages went unanswered. The silence was deafening, and Haley's fragile mental state began to unravel. As the darkness closed in around her, Haley became convinced that she was truly alone in the world. The pain and despair she had been carrying for so long became too much to bear. In a desperate bid to escape the agony, Haley made the fateful decision to end her life. The rooftop, with its haunting view of the city below, became her final destination.
The encounter, saving Haley from suicide.
Haley stood at the edge of the rooftop, the wind whipping her hair into a frenzy as she gazed out at the city below. The knife trembled in her hand, her eyes fixed on the concrete 5 stories down. "Why wouldn't I do it?" she whispered to herself, the words torn from her soul. "Do I even matter?" Just as she was about to take the final step, a gentle voice cut through the chaos in her mind. "You matter, Haley," Eminem said softly, his voice a lifeline in the darkness. "You matter to me, Haley." Haley's eyes flickered towards the sound, her gaze locking onto Eminem's face. He stood a few feet away, his eyes filled with compassion and understanding. "You see, I have a special daughter. I named her Haley because of what she meant to me." Eminem continued, his voice weaving a spell of hope around Haley. "She brought clarity and purpose to my life. She is my hero. I know your dad felt the same too when he had you. You were his hero. You are a hero." Tears welled up in Haley's eyes as Eminem's words pierced her heart. "The world needs you. We need to hear your story. How you survived and made it to this point," Eminem urged, his voice filled with conviction. Haley's lips trembled as she opened her mouth to speak. "I want a new life," she muttered, the words barely audible. "One without a cause. So I'm coming home tonight." Eminem's eyes locked onto hers, recognition flashing across his face. "Yeah," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. Haley went on, "Well, no matter what the cost. And if the plane goes down, or if the crew can't wake me up, well, just know that I'm all right. I was not afraid to die." The words hung in the air, a poignant reminder of the song that had brought them together. Eminem took a step closer, his eyes burning with intensity, trepidation. "Haley," he muttered softly, "remember the song ends with this line. I guess we are who we are. Headlights shining in the dark night. I drive on. Maybe we took this too far." The silence between them was palpable, a sense of understanding and connection that transcended words. "Haley, maybe we took this too far," Eminem whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "I know your story. I see myself in you. Remind me so much of how much meaning we could bring to life and people with our unique stories and struggles." Haley's eyes locked onto Eminem's, a sense of wonder and gratitude washing over her. "Remember, you told me Eminem gave you hope?" Eminem asked, a small smile playing on his lips. "Haley, I know this may sound unbelievable, but Haley, you give Eminem hope too." As Eminem spoke, Haley's tears began to flow, her body shaking with sobs. Eminem reached out, his hand closing around hers like a lifeline. "We could work out something," he urged, his voice filled with conviction. "It doesn't look so bad at this point. We can fix it. We got one more chance to do right, and it's tonight. You don't have to repeat the trend." As Eminem's words washed over her, Haley felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She looked up at Eminem, her eyes searching for answers. "Gimme your hands." "Haley," Eminem whispered, his eyes locked onto hers. Haley reached out, her hands trembling as Eminem pulled her into a tight hug. They stood there, holding each other, as the world around them melted away. The crowd that had gathered below erupted into cheers and applause, but Haley and Eminem didn't notice. They were lost in their own little world, a world of hope and redemption. As they hugged, Eminem's tears mingled with Haley's, their hearts beating as one. In that moment, they both knew that they had found something special, a connection that would change their lives forever.